Hello, my name is Dave Turo Shields, and I am here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and from Kenosis Counseling Center. I have 32 years' experience as a psychotherapist and a certified life coach. And my story today is going to sound like talk about social anxiety disorder, the symptoms, and some of what you can do about helping with some of those symptoms. My story is very close to this. I struggled with social anxiety early in my childhood and all the way through into my adulthood before I learned the coping skills to be able to deal with that and have a successful career. So I'll talk a little bit about that tonight as well. About 9% of Americans struggle with social anxiety disorder. I think that number is low. I think it's probably much higher. I think that in America today, we're just now starting to understand what social anxiety is. We're just now starting to talk about it and understand it. And as we do so, more and more folks will have the awareness, will learn about what it is, and folks will start coming forward in bigger numbers for treatment. It starts early. About 50% of folks that we've seen so far in treatment start at about age 8 to 11. I know my social anxiety was rampant in early to middle grade school. Was evident in classrooms when I was chosen to talk, picked to talk, to answer questions, when I was put in small groups to do activities, when it was my turn to present to the class, in gym class activities, or in groups there on the playground, in sporting groups, and many other things like that as well. In social environments, in family gatherings, was some of the areas I struggled in as well. What is social anxiety? If you boil it down, it is an unrealistic fear that others may judge you. And boiling it down, that's exactly what it is. You're afraid mostly that people will reject you or make fun of you, and that you'll feel somehow that you've made a horrible mistake and that you'll be humiliated by the outcome. You worry a lot that you'll do something horrible and you'll embarrass yourself, and that the outcome of that will be something that you cannot deal with. And so you move into a coping strategy that is one of avoidance, where you try to avoid at all costs. You try to trim your life down to the bare essentials, where you're not having to face those situations where you feel like you might do something silly or stupid. And you try to avoid going out. It might be lonely and you'd like to date. You really would, but you don't put yourself in that situation because you're afraid you'll screw it up, or that you'll freeze up, or that you'll look silly in front of another person. You have a very small group of friends, if any, because you're not good at that kind of thing. You may have called yourself an introvert early and often in life. You may be an introvert. Introverts are probably the bulk of folks who struggle with social anxiety disorder, although extroverts can struggle with social anxiety disorder as well. What causes social anxiety disorder? Temperament, how you're built, can make you more vulnerable to having social anxiety. Not all introverts are social anxiety disordered folks, but some are. And Another cause is trauma, some kind of trauma happening to you in your early childhood or teenage years. Bullying, being bullied, can strip away confidence and the ability to get out there and be engaged socially and in classrooms and in sporting events and some of those sorts of things. So those are some of the causes of social anxiety disorder that we know of so far. Let's see here. Let's see. Social anxiety sufferers obsess a lot, and oftentimes their mind is filled with the worst possible outcomes in any situations that are coming up in their lives, whether that's the next work day, whether that's the next college school day, whether that's the next gathering of friends, any situation where they're going to be asked to or expected to engage in some kind of social interaction. Um, More and more that can lead to avoidance and isolation. I know at one point in my life I was considered and called a hermit by folks, and it was said in a joking and loving way, um, but uh, it was nonetheless a fact. I had a very small but close circle of friends who cared deeply about me. They were concerned for me, but they tried to share that concern in a humorous way at one point in my life. But the pattern of avoidance can be rampant, and you can close yourself in a nasty way if you continue to give into the power of this disorder. It can take over your life. Let's see here. Physical symptoms of social anxiety disorder include blushing, a fast heart rate, trembling. It can lead to having a shaky voice when you try to talk. It can lead to trembling or shaking of your hands or your body. It can lead to sweating. It can lead to nausea. In some cases, it can lead to a loose stool, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. It can lead to dizziness or headaches. And another area that's often included here is muscle tension. So especially in the neck. The more a person is aware of physical signs, the more they become freaked out by the idea that other people might notice, and so they become obsessed then with the fear of other people noticing that they're anxious, or that they're sweating, or that they're not able to breathe right, and then they become freaked out over the idea that somebody might notice these things, and that they're going to reject them, or that they might look silly and be humiliated because someone notices that they're anxious. So it's just a revolving door, these feelings, these thoughts, and these feelings getting stronger and stronger. Sometimes in severe cases of social anxiety, as it gets worse over time and this problem takes over more and more of your life, you can become afraid of going out at all. You can become afraid of entering a particular room. You can become afraid of going into bathrooms. You may not be able to make eye contact, and those sorts of things. Um, what are some things that you can do to help yourself out? So one of the things that you can do first and foremost is you have to name this thing. This is called social anxiety disorder, and is you learn as much as you can about it, and you name it and you own it. I have this problem. This problem has taken over X percentage of my life, and I'm just going to own that. And sometimes naming it and owning it can be half the solution. And so do that and own it. If this is true for you, own it, and let's go from there. I'm going to share some coping strategies that we use with clients that's been helpful to me, and let's roll through some of these. The first one is relaxation. For somebody with social anxiety, relaxation is really key. Deep breathing can be absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to teach you about the 4x4x4 breath. 4 seconds, a 4 count inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the inhale. 4 count on holding the breath, and then a 4 count on the exhale. You do that 6 times, and try to be anxious after your 6th round of that. It's nearly impossible to do, and so you've got access to that breathing technique anytime you want. And if you include that in your day multiple times a day, it will be very helpful to you. And you can do that kind of thing around people, and they won't notice. And so you can have access to that skill in any time of day, in any place, anywhere. And so another skill is guided imagery. And so for this, there's a couple of tools I'm going to recommend. If you have an iPhone or an Android phone, go to your app store and download Calm or Think Breathe. I think it's called Think, Act, and Breathe. There are two apps, and they have fantastic meditations. Some of them are guided meditations. Some of them, and I know that when you have social anxiety, that your ability to concentrate is terrible. And so you need something short and sweet. And they have meditations that are as short as a minute long, and are as long as 45 minutes to an hour. And so start with the short meditations, start with the guided meditations, and do guided imagery. It helps to center you. When you're anxious, you live about 3 feet outside of your body, and you've had very few experiences of feeling centered and inside your body. And so that experience is like having you're nervous. I used to describe it as I felt like I had my nerves on the outside of my skin instead of on the inside. It's a terrible experience, but I lived most of my life that way before I started learning how to become centered and living my life from my core instead of from my anxiety problem. And so guided imagery and meditation can be a real gift for you in your fight against this problem. And so pick up guided imagery and meditation. Start where you're at with very short meditations and work up from there. The third area is progressive muscle relaxation. This is an astonishing way of reclaiming some of your life back, and it's very helpful. So you start with your fists and squeeze them tight for 5 seconds, and then release. And then you'll want to go with your forearms and do the forearms, do the shoulders, and then do your back and the lower back, and then around to your tummy, and then make sure you've got your neck in there, and then all the way down to your thighs, your calves, your feet, and then make sure you hit every muscle group in your body, holding for 5 seconds at a time, tensing as much as you can, and releasing. This is an extraordinary sensation and feeling for somebody with anxiety because we hold tension. Social anxiety disorder folks hold tension in their neck and shoulders particularly, often as well in their chest. And I know I have a lot of tension in my chest and lower back as well. But progressive muscle relaxation does a fine job of releasing a lot of tension. I'd also encourage you to get massage. Massage can help tremendously. And one study that just came out this last year talks about that the obsessive and rumination that social anxiety folks struggle with in their mind shuts off when you do progressive relaxation and when you get massage. And so that can be a real gift and awesome to experience when you struggle so much with social anxiety and the obsessive nature to the disease. So those are a couple of the three things that I wanted to talk about with relaxation. I wanted to move on to cognitive reframing and talk a little bit about the mind and what this disorder does to the mind over time. We become very negative in our thinking, and we become very irrational in our thinking, and we even know that our thoughts are not true oftentimes when we think them. But now we have a name for this disorder. We have some skills that we're starting to build to fight this disorder. And so we're going to attempt to take 2%. First of all, let me step back for a moment and say, set a percentage that you think this problem is in control of your life for. So ask yourself in general, what percentage of my life does this problem have control over on any given day? I know that in my worst moments, this problem controlled 96% of my day. I had about 4% of my day where I felt like I was in control. and about 96% of my day where I felt social anxiety was in charge of my life. And so that's where I started. And then so once you've set that percentage, then I want to take you into cognitive reframing and talk a little bit about setting goals with some of these strategies, the relaxation strategy and now the cognitive reframing strategy. I want to take 2%. I want you to set the goal of 2% a day with all these strategies. 2% a day, I want you to set that goal of reclaiming 2% a day back in your life. And that is an awesome goal. So it doesn't sound like much, but in 1 month, you can have half your life back. 2% a day over 30 days is like 50 some odd percent. And so that's half your life back from this problem. And this problem, we have to respect it because it's had so much power for so long. And so we're not going to set extravagant goals because this problem will raise up and smash us back down just to prove how powerful it has been over our lives. So we have to be reasonable and build up strength over time and practice. And so 2% a day is a fine goal to have, and it will work. So cognitive reframing, back to our minds and the untruths that we've been teaching ourselves. So we like to assume the worst. We believe others see us negatively, and we overreact and we personalize everything. And so we need to begin to identify some of our negative thoughts. So when we think about going on a date, I want you to start writing down 1 to 3 sentences of what I know that person is going to think about me. Write it down. When we think about peers at work or school, write down 3 thoughts that come to mind about what those folks think about me. When we think about friends, write down 3 immediate thoughts that come to you about what those friends think about you, and don't edit, don't oversee. Just write them down, because these are the negative, obsessive thoughts that you've been having for years, and so we want them out in the open, out into the light. And so we want to have about 6 to 12 negative thoughts that we want to bring into the light. And then what we want to do is we want to replace those negative thoughts with something that makes sense and is more true than those negative thoughts. And so you want to take each thought and you want to flip the thought to a more true or more rational thought. And so you want to write the more rational thought underneath the negative thought or the irrational thought. So I used one earlier in a video that I made for children, and so the negative thought, and this is with a kid that we worked with at our practice some time ago, but his negative thought was, my teacher thinks I'm stupid because I'm bad at math. And so that was the untrue thought, or the negative thought. And the reconstruction, the better thought was, I'm struggling with math, but my teacher will help me to improve. And so that was the more rational thought, and the thought that he began to practice on a daily basis, which helped him mightily in math, and it helped his relationship with his teacher improve. And so that's an example of what you can do. And so that is cognitive restructuring or cognitive reframing. And so you can ease into that 6 to 12 sentences, or 6 to 12 reconstructive reframing examples that I want you to write down. All right, and then problem solving skills is the third area that I want you to work on. And so an example of that, and keep in mind this problem has been very strong, and it has been a master of making you an avoider. And so we're going to turn that around, but it's going to be just a little bit at a time. So one area that I worked with a gentleman on some time ago was his avoidance of making friends. And he was terribly lonely. He was an all-star at work, but he got to work alone at work, and they nicknamed him the spreadsheet guy. And so he was highly successful at work. He did live on spreadsheets. He did everything in a spreadsheet. It was amazing. But they nicknamed him the spreadsheet guy. But he was incredibly lonely and wanted to make friends. And so we made a goal, some problem solving skills. He was deathly afraid of talking to people. And so he had a lot of negative thoughts. So we restructured those thoughts into more positive thoughts. And then we did some problem solving around what he could do with making friends. And so he made a goal, first of all, talking to one person a day. And so he made a goal of talking to one person a day, and then he problem solved about how he would do that. So the first thing that he did was that he would do a relaxation strategy. Okay, anytime that he was thinking about walking up to and initiating a conversation with somebody, first he would do one of his relaxation strategies first before he would do that. Then he would practice deep breathing as he was initiating a conversation with somebody. That was the second thing that he would do. Problem solving piece number 3 was that he would pick 3 things that he could start a conversation with. One thing would be anything new in the news today that he noticed. The second thing was his favorite, one of his favorite courses in college was, that would be his second thing. And his third thing was his favorite hobby outside of work. And so those were the 3 things. Now, the first month of doing this was absolutely horrific, and it was very anxiety provoking. But he stuck with it with my support, and was able to gut through it. And he didn't die, and nobody rejected him, and he did okay. Within 3 months, he'd made several new friends, and within a year, he talked about how much he enjoyed having conversations with people. And within a year, he'd also heard from a couple different people something like this. They would say to him, "Wow, what a great conversationalist you are," and he would laugh and say, "You have no idea how I used to be." And so great things are coming for you as you begin to work on this and begin to take on social anxiety disorder, this problem that's been in charge of your life. And you can begin to see success like that as well. Now, I need to say that if you don't take the mantle or the flag and take charge of this, and it can get worse. It can lead to depression, and you may already have depression in addition to your social anxiety. It can lead to substance abuse. Nothing feels greater to an anxious person than being able to add a substance and feel the anxiety go away for a little while. And so there is a risk for substance abuse. And at the least, who wants to stay this way any longer? Once you know there's a solution, and once you know what you're struggling with. And so if you think you can do this on your own, following some of the advice I've given you tonight, that's fantastic. If you need some help, we're here for you. And so if you don't get help through Kenosis Counseling Center, get help somewhere. And if you're somewhere other than Indianapolis, we can help you get help. We're ready to connect you somewhere. Just give us a call at 317-865-1674. We do offer video counseling and phone counseling, and so we can access you just about anywhere that you live. But we'll also recommend places for you to go. And so we're here to help, and hopefully this was a helpful video for you, and you can get on track and help yourself out a little bit. And so if you enjoyed this video and thought it was helpful, please like it below and hit subscribe so that you can see my next helpful video. And I would appreciate the like as well. And so take care of yourself, and God bless.